From the crossroads of America in the Hoosier state of Indiana, this is Get In, the podcast focused on the unfolding stories and extraordinary innovation happening right now in the Heartland. I'm Nate Spangle, head of community at Powder Keg, and I will be one of your hosts for today's conversation. I'm joined in studio by co-host birthday boy Christopher Toph Day, CEO at Elevate Ventures, and Matt Hunckler, CEO at Powder Keg.
Womp womp.
on the show today, we are going to be covering a few topics that the community has asked for a deep dive on.
You forget thinking about what can go wrong. It's like I think you should always be, well, I don't know, maybe you shouldn't, but at least I always think about what can go wrong and kind of trying to think 3 steps ahead.
Those include failure, building relationships and community, and how to capitalize on momentum. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Nate, for having me.
Oh, it's wonderful to be
Great NPR voice there.
I would just like to say thank you for the shout on the birthday. I turned 39 today. It's
39
amazing.
years young, baby.
Love
That's my number, and I'm sticking to it.
I love it.
Absolutely. I love it, Toph. That's what I like to hear. Well, gentlemen, today we're going to do a deep dive into a couple topics. I've got some feedback from the community that we've hit on a few of them, but they want to dive deep. They want to learn a little bit more inside the entrepreneurial minds of both of you. So we're going to start with a super easy question, like very light, just to get it rolling. So, Toph, tell us the story of your biggest failure.
Well, I have a lot of failures. And my biggest failure, I'll tell you the first biggest failure that I experienced that I thought literally might be the end of my entrepreneurial career, that at that point in time in that company was about 2 weeks. So we started a broadband company, and I really didn't know anything about broadband. I knew I could get contracts to install broadband systems, and we hired these people who were, smarter than I was to actually build these systems. But I had misquoted our first 3 projects, and out of the gate learned within 30 days that we were already $120,000 in the red because I had messed up the estimates, left some things out.
That kind of seems like the painting story you told us.
Yeah,
about the mansion.
yeah. It went from $3,500 mistake to a $120,000 mistake, and immediately went to our investors. I'm like, I made a big mistake here. And they're like, well, got to work through it.
Tell me about that conversation, right? Because I feel like that's something that, people face, and they have that anxiety around, oh my gosh, I have to own up and talk about this mistake to investors, to members on your team. How did you navigate that conversation?
Grin and bear it. Like literally the night when I realized it had happened and I knew I was going to be talking to them the next day, that night I literally stood in front of a mirror and rehearsed how I was going to deliver that bad news. And, I noticed that I think throughout life, there are a lot of people. Let's say that word's called conflict. I don't view these things as conflict, right? It's just moments of honesty, transparency, just being real, being human. And I've noticed that over the years that there are a number of people that will kick things down kick cans down the road or try to sweep things under the carpet. Those phrases. It never gets better, never. And so you just deal with it up front, and you just be factual. Like that little phrase I've mentioned before, I was taught to manage by fact right out of college. You manage by fact, you just be forthright, and this is what happened, and this is what I'm going to do about it, and what do you want to talk about, right?
I think that's a great perspective, and I do think there is that time. It's I'll just give this some time to think about the perfect thing to say, but it's not
there is no perfect
better.
thing.
I think that's a great framework, though, for delivering bad news.
Yeah.
Just be upfront about it. Don't bury the lead. Don't beat around the bush.
Yeah.
Here's what happened. Here's why it happened.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm going to do about it. Here's how I'm going to make sure it's not going to happen again.
And in fact, in every board meeting I've had in every company, I've always led with the bad news.
Yeah.
Right. Here's what went wrong.
Yep.
In the last quarter, the last month, whenever we'd met previously, I just, between those 2 time periods, anything had gone wrong or not to a plan.
Yeah.
Just lead with that. Okay. Let's get the bad stuff out of the way. Here's where we are. Here's what happened. Any questions on that? And then we're going to talk about next steps.
What's interesting? I do that in my investor updates. I'm literally just good, bad. Plan,
right?
And that's basically the update.
Yeah.
But one thing I noticed is that in the Elevate investor updates that are the quarterly must do these.
Yeah.
There's no space for the bad news. It's tell me your 3 biggest accomplishments. Tell and then tell me the 3 biggest things you're going to accomplish.
So you might see something different soon.
All right.
Ooh,
Cool.
Okay, that's a great.
That's so
segue.
funny you say that.
That's my feature request.
You just gave me chills.
Yeah.
It's so funny you say that. I just got chills again. because we literally talked about this a few weeks ago
Really?
on the information that we should be asking for. And the reason we want the bad news is not so we can go beat up on the founder.
Of course.
It's so we can help. Like,
Yeah.
is there something we can do to help
and it's
correct
good
something?
coaching for the founders.
Yeah,
Like,
that's right.
hey, you got to deliver the bad news.
That's right.
No, that's great. Great segue into now you're on the opposite side. Toph just hit your 1 year at Elevate.
Yesterday was my 1 year anniversary, July
Yesterday.
18th.
This
Amazing.
is a big week for you.
It's a
Toph
huge
is
week.
just crushing
Back
it.
to back, right?
Come on.
1 year anniversary, birthday. Let's roll. What's tomorrow?
That's right.
And we were guests on another podcast yesterday too, so we got to celebrate
Yes.
that with
What was
the
the,
podcast.
what was the show? We got to link
Savage to Sage.
Yeah.
it up. Ooh,
It
with
was
full
great.
stack.
Yeah, with full stack. Daniel
Nice.
Fuller.
We went deep.
Yeah, we did.
I love it. I cannot wait to listen to that
Go
one.
check that one out.
But so Toph, you've been on the other side now for a year. And so you've had experience. You have to deliver the bad news. You're the CEO, the founder, giving that bad news. As the investor on the other side, when you're hearing bad news, how do you digest that? And what do you appreciate the way founders frame it? Like, what have you found of like people delivering bad news to you that you not enjoy necessarily, but respect?
So, and I've probably been on the other side for like 20 years, right? So whether it's angel investing or I had an investment banking firm for a number of years, and now here at Elevate. So by the way, all humans aren't created equal. All investors aren't created equal. And so if you don't have investors that think this way, then you probably don't want them as investors. But when I'm getting bad news, I'm not thinking, oh my gosh, this person may not be as good as I thought they were. Or that is not going through my mind. What immediately goes through my mind is who do I know or what can I do or what can I share that will help? Right. And if they deliver it in a succinct, upfront manner, like you just described, Matt, man, I'm right there. Like, let's go arm in arm. What can we do to help fix this thing? And we're doing this a lot right now at Elevate. For the last 6 months, we've been doing a lot of stuff with companies, helping them work through things. And if they hem and haul around or try to sugarcoat it, then I start to get more skeptical. Then I ask more questions and I dive in even deeper, right? Because then I'm like, something's not, am I getting all the bad news or just like the headline of the bad news, right?
That's great. Matt, any advice in there of delivering that bad news?
Delivering, don't bury the lead.
Don't bury the lead.
Don't bury the lead. Get right to it.
Yeah.
Here's what it's bad. You also don't have to like go into great detail. This didn't work. This didn't work. This didn't work. That's a big part of startups, right? Is like there's lots of stuff that doesn't work, but like pick the 2 or 3 things that didn't go well, put those right up front, and then talk about how you're going to address those or what you learned from them.
Yeah, that's spot on. Like, just think about any other situation in life. If somebody in any part of your life is delivering bad news, what do you want to hear? You want to hear what's the solution or what are we going to do next, right? And that's no different than that CEO to investor relationship, right? So now what are we going to do? Now what?
I will say too, this is something I screwed up big time when I was in my 20s. Like it was always what's awesome, what's going great, where are the cool things that are happening. And, that can get you a long way. Just positivity is great. Like it's better than like ruminating and, oh, this didn't work and this didn't work and this startup failed and that startup failed. But to build trust and credibility, you have to share what's not working.
Yeah.
I remember when I was first pitching Powder Keg, I had a very well-known serial entrepreneur here in town who I was pitching to. And I was, I don't really know who the competitors are. Or, there's some kind of stupid response like that I said. And he was like, Matt, come on, like, be credible. Like, it's not credible to say that, like, it's just been awesome, awesome, awesome. Like, tell me what's actually going on.
Yeah.
And that really stuck with me. And when you think about what a good story is, we like stories of people who have faced challenges.
Yeah.
No one likes a movie where it's like, this guy did something awesome and this gal did something awesome and then they did something awesome again and then it even got awesomer.
Yeah.
Like that is a boring story that people are not going to get behind, care about, and want to be a part of. And we talked about this yesterday on the show. Building a company, building a career, building anything does not happen alone. And one of the best ways to make sure you're lonely and on an island is just saying, I'm great. Everything's good. I don't need anything.
I'm good. Oh, life is good.
Yeah.
Life's great. Living the dream. Classic. Okay. So that's more of like how to address failure to, we were talking to investors. What about when you guys are you've been CEOs, you currently are CEOs, talking about failure to your team, right? You don't want dissent amongst the ranks. You want to make sure positivity, motivation, but your team can easily read. They know what's going on inside there. How do you deliver bad news, talk about failures within your company to your team?
So you want to go first? Or you want me to go first?
I'm happy to.
Okay, I'll go after Matt.
I think first, don't bury the lead. Get right to it. Here's what happened. Here's why it happened. Here's what we're going to do about it. But not trying to skip the step of like helping your team emotionally process things. This happened here recently with the powder keg team. We had our CTO move on. In the moment, felt like really bad news. You know, our CTO had been with us over 2 years. Really just talented CTO, co-founder, helped us build a lot of our platform. That was not great news. And we needed to slow down. You know, we said, you know what, this is big news. And it's clear to me, you know, after several meetings of screwing it up and just being like, and here's what we're going to do. And like just getting to the doing part, it was clear to me we needed to slow down and really like process this. And something, you know, I phoned a friend literally like within minutes of this happening. Max Yoder, well-known entrepreneur, one of my best friends. Hey, this feels like a huge deal and I don't really know how to process this. And one of the best things he shared with me, which I shared with my team, is just encourage people to talk to other people outside the company about it. Like, hey, I believe that this is going to be okay, and here's why. But like, don't take my word for it. Like, Max offered up because he's an investor and, you know, longtime member of the powder keg community. You know, feel free to tell your team, like, if they want to talk to me about this, like stuff like this happen all the time at Lessonly. Everywhere. So that was a really good, just tactical sort of like, but don't take my word for it. Like, go do the research yourself. You know, we have these advisors, we have these investors who said, you know, they're more than willing to talk to you about, you know, their experience with where a CTO moved on and how that actually opened up opportunity for something else to happen. So those would be my two things that in a very recent experience, just like slow down and pay attention to your team and allow them to emotionally process it, and allow them to have negative thoughts. And I don't even necessarily mean negative thoughts, but like, you know, we get bad news, our mind goes to a place where it's like, oh gosh, this is going to be really hard, or, you know,
that oh shit moment.
Yeah.
You're just like, oh
yeah,
shoot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then talk about it, you know, create the open space to talk about it, but then also like encourage them to talk about it with other people too, who have been through it and can provide that perspective that like, this isn't just the CEO trying to stay positive and, you know, power through things. There's a lot of precedent for it's going to be okay.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that. You know, like at Demand Jump, for example, we had a thing called Freaky Fridays. And so our belief was that a family that eats together stays together. And so for every, up until we actually turned it to Wacky Wednesdays about 5 years into it. But for
Gotta have the alliteration.
For 5 years, we ate together, maybe 4 years. We ate together every Friday, and then the team got too big and it was space-wise. And so then we turned it into Wacky Wednesdays and more of a Zoom environment. But we shared what's going on with the whole team. And so I think like transparency is critical. If people are smart, they know what's going on. And so if you're not transparent and share the good news and the bad news, if you don't share the bad news, they're going to make up their own bad news. Mm-hmm. And that's even worse.
Mm-hmm. Let the imagination run.
The imagination. So the imagination of bad news is 10x, 100x worse than any bad news you're ever going to share. And then the rumor mill starts, and then, you know, and that's just never good. And so we've always, in all companies, we've always shared, like, here's our plan, right? And I believe, by the way, also you should be able to run any company from one piece of paper. And that one piece of paper is, you know, upper left is your BHAG, right? Your big, hairy, audacious, or insert another word if you choose, goal. So BHAG. So that's the craziness. So like Toyota in 1969, their BHAG was world domination.
Yes.
Right. And then you have a theme in the upper right-hand corner. So wherever the quarter is, you have a theme. And it's really awesome if you can be extra proactive and say, if we meet these goals, everybody gets a prize, whatever the little fun, maybe it's a party, maybe it's a whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Wacky Wednesday.
And then you go down and you have your high level for the next 3 years or maybe 5 years, where those super high level kind of aspirational goals you want to get to. And then it goes down to, okay, this upcoming year, that's charted out. And then it's quarterly goals by department. 3 things, each department, that are critical, that lead into the 1 year goals, that lead into the 3 to 5 year goals, that lead into the BHAG.
I love that.
Let's get a template linked up in the show notes
absolutely.
on this. Yeah, for those who are listening right now or watching.
And it's super helpful for everybody,
Totally.
for the CEO, the entire team, to
One
be
page.
aligned, right? To just one piece of paper. And we always told everybody, like, you're going to get quizzed, throughout the quarter. Like, you're expected to know these certain things. And people did, right? Because they're all bought in. Now, when we didn't hit numbers, right, we shared that, right? And the once a month of the Freaky Friday, we would kind of go deeper into, okay, our goal was X and we hit Y, and this is why we didn't hit that goal, we believe, and this is what we're going to do about it, right? And hey, did we miss anything? Any ideas, right? It was very open format. So I just think that's critical, especially in this day and age. Like, you just have to be transparent. And when the news gets really bad, right? Like, hey, we might run out of cash, in 6 months or 3 months or whatever you're going through with that in any stage of a given company. It's just life that some people can handle that and some can't. And some people might leave you because of the instability. I think most people join startups because of the learning opportunity, the exhilaration, all those kinds of things. And so they know that there's an inherent risk that cash is going to get tight from time to time, right? Or we're going to bomb some product release or whatever. We're going to lose a key player. And you're right. Like, when it happens, it opens up opportunities you never imagined. And you may not see that in 1 day or 1 week. It may take 6 months. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
But it's a journey.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that segues perfectly into kind of our next topic about momentum, right? So ups and downs. Our friend Jeff Smolian talks about never ride a roller coaster upside down, right? It's a roller coaster, right? And when you're at the bottom, right, you're talking about that failure, you've just delivered that news. What are some tips or some strategies to build that momentum back up, right? You just came out of the board meeting, given tough news, you're disseminating that to your team, and it's like, great, tomorrow when I show up, I want to start building momentum. What do we got to do?
So I personally think about things in threes. And I think if it's more complicated than that, it's not doable. The human brain, I think there may even be studies out there about this, but I think the human brain has trouble processing more than three things. So it can't be, here's the 25 things we're going to do to fix this.
Yep.
Well, a lot of those things are kind of irrelevant. It's like, what are the critical path items that we got to keep everybody focused on? So that's just off the cuff.
It's so interesting you say that, because we literally our OKRs are like 3 objectives and 3 key results for how we measure. We know that we accomplished that objective.
Yeah.
So that thinking in threes thing, I think there's something magical about that. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Okay. So keeping it simple. Other tips for building up momentum and getting the ball rolling.
You got to celebrate the wins.
Yeah,
you got to celebrate the wins. And so, I mean,
people forget. I've forgotten. I still forget.
Yeah,
to celebrate the wins.
Me too. It is not natural to me. I'm always like, okay, did that thing. Of course I did that thing because I've been visualizing that thing this whole time. So like, why are we celebrating?
Yeah.
That's like the internal voice. But I've got to remember, it's about sharing in the wins. Like, you can't just all be owning the negative things that happen and only doing those things. One of the biggest ways I've learned this strategy is in training a dog. So we had a pandemic puppy that found its way to my sister's coffee shop and had behavioral issues because it was adopted during the pandemic. And the best way to train a dog is the best way to train any animal, including humans, including myself, which is positive reinforcement. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. So you see the dog doing the thing that you want it to do. Maybe another dog walks by and your dog does not bark. So maybe the behavior is just like, it doesn't do the bad thing, right? You've got to reinforce that.
If people don't feel like you have their back, then they're kind of always looking over their shoulder. And which kind of equates to 1 foot out the door or half a foot out the door, which means you're not at full tilt.
Right? So for leaders, right, CEOs, they want to have their employees back. We're a family. I have your back. What do you recommend? Some actionable items, CEOs out there, how they can show their employees that they have their back.
So when people screw up, and they're extra remorseful, like, just get in front of it and like just take the fear and the anxiety of some unknown consequence. I've seen this happen a lot where like some of the best people like they just feel awful about something, a mistake that was made, and just immediately taking the heat off of like, you're fine. Like, just get that on the, just tell them up front. Don't make them, what's the word I'm looking for? Don't make them
Squirm.
Don't make them squirm. Like, that's not good, right? Just let them know. Just communicate like a human. I think 99.9% of the world's problems are a lack of communication. That sounds simple, but again, human nature is like to not think about the person first, but to whatever the issue is, to get focused on that. We'll deal with the human side first.
I mean, especially from like the younger professional perspective, it's like you make a big mistake and you walk into a meeting, you're like, oh shit, am I about to get fired?
Yeah.
Like, am I gonna lose my job getting out of this meeting? Yeah. And like just starting off, hey, it's okay. Like that can set the tone for the rest of that meeting, the rest of that interaction of like, oh, okay, the world is not ending. Like sun's still gonna rise tomorrow. It's all gonna be okay. I think that's super powerful. And about celebrating wins, I think that something Matt and our team does pretty well is being invested in not only the work we do at Powder Keg, but like our personal lives a little bit in a professional manner, right? So I remember last November, I was running my first marathon and they like pulled together and they got me like a record player because I was going to set a record. And it was just like a really like impactful moment that maybe didn't mean much to the team, but to me, it was like, oh, they do have my back. Like not just here at work and what we're doing there, but like in life, like with all of my endeavors.
I think that goes to what you're saying about just knowing the whole person.
Yeah. Surprise gift cards. If somebody went through some crazy 2 or 3 month sprint, just like working around the clock like a dog, trying to get something accomplished because it was critical and need to be finished. Those things are always great as well. I got to be honest. I forget some of that stuff. Sometimes I feel like, that's one thing I could do better at. Mm-hmm. Is being more even proactive because
I don't think you can do it enough.
You probably can't.
I don't think there's a leader out there that is just like, oh, you've positively reinforced enough. You can coast. It's like the way you build momentum is by like, oh, something good happened. Reward. Yeah. Something good happened. And a reward doesn't have to be a gift card. It can just be, hey, great job on that thing.
Yeah. Be a shout out on email or whatever it might be. The AHODs, whatever people call them on a quarterly basis when the team gets together. Being also intentional when you have those things to get the team together, do fun activities, whether it's bowling or why am I forgetting words today?
Escape room,
golf,
escape room, or what do you do when you run around trying to find clues and stuff?
Geocache kind of thing.
Scavenger hunt.
Yes. Once I found myself in a scavenger hunt singing on stage at the Ratskeller. That was not good.
That's amazing.
That's incredible.
Yeah. That was embarrassing. But anyways, hey, we won, right? So anything for the team.
When we do a get in at night, we're going to need that full story. Like our after midnight episode.
Yes.
In full disclosure, there was like a wedding party, like rehearsal getting set up, and people were sitting down and stuff. And I went up there and started singing on stage and got some interesting looks. But hey, it was all for the team. But when you do those things, also intentionally, don't make people choose teams. Like choose them before, but also intentionally mix up your team.
Yeah.
Of getting developers with salespeople and whatnot, because it's easy for everybody it's like, you ever notice in a meeting, everybody sits in the same spot? Like in this podcast, actually, we sit in the same spot. Maybe we do it for strategic reasons. But anyway, but the short story is like, if you walk in, think about your teams when you walk into meetings, everybody sits in the same seat every time. Mix it up. Sit next to somebody else.
Ooh, there we go. So everyone listening, right? Next time you walk into a meeting, I'm picking a different seat. I'm going to mix it up completely.
And it's going to confuse people. Oh. You might have some people that actually get a little upset.
Oh, I actually am like a creature of habit when it comes to that. So if Matt sits in my seat, I'm going to be like, I know what he's doing.
Yeah.
Well, and I want to bring up something that we heard on the podcast with Heather and Doug from Advisa and Black Ink IT, which is one-on-ones are just an amazing foundation for that stuff. Like getting to know the whole person, having those one-on-ones where you slow down and you're not in the weeds talking about the tactical thing. Because it's really easy to be like, this is the OKR. We're going to talk about the objective. We're going to talk about the key results. Why aren't we hitting this key result? Why are we way overshooting this other key result? And we didn't estimate that one better. And it's really hard not to do that. But having a set sort of agenda with a one-on-one where you talk about the other stuff, of the whole human.
I would be very curious to see in people's one-on-one agenda, who has the talk about XYZ, like life topics, or is it just like, let's get down to brass tacks? You're underperforming, you're overperforming, like whatever you're doing, like business. I think that's like powerful thing you could add to your agenda. just like talking about the holistic person.
You know, another fun thing that they this wasn't my idea. Somebody at Domain Jump implemented on Freaky Fridays. It was voluntary, so if you didn't want to do it, you didn't have to do it. But tell your life story, however you want to tell it. And it was awesome.
Yeah,
I just got chills. I mean, like, we learned so much about people that, you know, you just didn't know.
Yeah.
I mean, just incredible backgrounds or experiences that people had or went through and did. And then it was always fun. Like, the more creative people would have these like insane presentations, and then you know, maybe someone else that's more analytical is kind of like black and white, like boom, boom. It was just awesome.
They
And everybody
spreadsheet it out, and graph it,
and everybody would celebrate and laugh at like, you know,
that.
just all the skill sets that would manifest themselves in the.
That's
it was
cool.
awesome.
I love that. Well, and you know, on the roller coaster, there are highs as well. You go, startups are ups and downs. Let's say when you are at a high, what is the biggest momentum killer that people need to watch out for, right? Your startup is cruising, you have good momentum, things are going right. What's going to be the biggest thing to throw the e-brake on?
You forget thinking about what can go wrong. It's like I think you should always be, well, I don't know, maybe you shouldn't, but at least I always think about, well, what can go wrong, and kind of trying to think 3 steps ahead. Like, what if this happens, then what? You know, what could go wrong? How can the train get off the tracks? And forgetting to keep looking outward, right? Keeping your eyes up on the horizon, getting comfortable. That's not good.
Okay. I think too, just getting distracted by the things that aren't going well. Like, in any startup, you're always going to have things that are not going well, and there's a balance, I think, between, like, you don't want to put blinders on and be like, oh, there's no, you know, I've got a beautiful garden and there's no weeds. It's perfect. Like that. That's dangerous. But also going the other direction and being like, oh, I've got this garden that's got all these weeds in it, and I got to just focus on these weeds. You then kind of like miss like what's flourishing right now, and then you don't. And maybe beating the garden analogy to death, but you don't harvest. You don't reap what you've sowed because you're so focused on the weeds. And so there is that kind of balance of making sure that the overall sort of like energy of the team doesn't like go down into the ditch. Yeah. And I think that's kind of what you're saying. You know, keep your eyes on the horizon. Don't go off the road just because, you know, something that made you swerve for a second.
Are you ready to transform your brand with award-winning video content that captures your vision and connects with your audience? Check out Alchemy, the experts at building your brand using video. From story-driven social media snippets that leave a lasting impression to compelling full-length documentaries, they have got the expertise to take your brand to the next level. Alchemy is actually our video partner here on Get In, and they do amazing work. All of the videos you see across social, across YouTube, all of that is done by Alchemy, and they're an amazing partner to work with. Reach out to me, Nate, at Powderkeg, or check out alchemyfilmco.com to get connected with Alden and his team. They will take care of all of your video needs.
Yeah, another thing I see is, and this can happen at any stage. It doesn't necessarily mean you're at the peak of momentum. In talking about the previous question on building momentum, you know, everybody reads a lot, presumably. And so they read a lot of articles around success, how to build teams, business models, et cetera. And what happens a lot of times is entrepreneurs will start to bleed together different types of businesses, different types of selling motions, different types of go-to-market strategies. And so they literally in one pitch will talk about, you know, we're going to go do PLG, and that's going to be freemium, and then we're also going to be selling enterprise, and we're setting up these channel partners and blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
None of that's going to happen. And by the way, I've suffered from some of this stuff over the years too. It's like anything I ever talk about is probably because I've made the same mistake. And and then also, like, you see all this opportunity, and so
go after all of it.
Yeah, let's do it all.
Yeah.
Why not? That makes total sense. Let's do it all. And that will absolutely prevent momentum or kill momentum.
Lack of focus.
Lack of focus. That was in my notes was, I think focus is a big thing for, it's like, yes, you don't want to focus on all the negative, and you don't want to put blinders on and be like, oh, life is so good. But I think that being intentional and being focused around what's working can really like keep the foot on the gas on what is working as you try to pile some more things onto the car versus, you always hear about the startups that chase this car like the dog, right? It's like that way and then that way and the next shiny thing. And it's like, keep your foot on the gas there. Like
Damon John talks about that story. I think I mentioned this before, but Damon John talks about, you know, himself, right? When he started, what is it, Fubu or Sufubu? And I think Under Armour was founded the same year. And And so he talks about, well, we both started the same year, and look who's bigger now. Now, Damon John's successful. He's awesome, right?
Oh, yeah.
But he's like, look at Under Armour. They're multiples of orders of magnitude bigger. And he's like, they were narrow and deep. They focused on dry fit shirts or something like that.
Yep.
And that's all they did
The
for
compression. Yeah.
Was it compression shirts?
Yeah.
That was the only thing.
And that's all they focused on for a number of years, went narrow and deep and really established that market. And then they started to add in, other products.
Yeah.
And I think that gives a lot of like, for any startup, for any growing business, it's like they're the expert in Under Armour. Like it was literally the tight compression shirts you wore under your football jersey or whatever your sporting thing was. And they were the even if their material was the exact same as Nike and all these other people, it was, you got to have Under Armour because they are the experts in heat gear and cold gear and all that jazz. So
I think about this a lot because it's very much true in marketing too. A lot of startups, it's like you almost have to like play the field and throw a lot of spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. But like once you see what's sticking, that's when you got to like narrow and focus and go narrow and deep. And then once you like start to see diminishing returns on that, that's when you start being like, oh, remember the spaghetti back on the wall? Like we wanted to go chase that thing. Let's test and see if that's working again. Same thing with like marketing strategies. It's like, we're not sure what's going to work. You don't want to go narrow and deep on one thing if you have no data that shows that's the way that it's working.
100%.
You want to like plant a bunch of seeds and then see what starts to sprout and then quickly like ignore the other stuff. I don't know why I'm on the garden analogy today, but like go and water like the one that is really showing like true potential that you can scale.
in all of our business analogies, right? The shoot bullets and then shoot your cannonball, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
exactly.
Bullet. Yeah, exactly. We're just crushing the analogies today. Well, guys, I want to do a little bit of a topic change, all right? And I want to talk, you guys are both master community builders. You have very robust networks of connections, whether that's mentees, mentors, just business relationships. And I want to dive in of how to cultivate good community and cultivate good relationships. So, Toph, if you were dropped in a brand new city and you knew no one, what is the first thing you would do to start building community?
Well, I would probably ask my existing friends.
Oh, you don't know anybody.
No, outside of that city.
Oh, okay.
Right?
All right.
So
We'll allow it.
presumably I have at least one friend. Can I have one friend?
You can
in
have
this
one
analogy?
friend. One friend.
So I would call my one friend. I would phone a friend, and that would live in a different city. And I would say, hey, do you know anybody in this city? That's the first thing.
The friend would be Matt, and then you'd say
So I'd
yes.
call Matt, and I'd say, Matt, do you know anybody in where? LA, right? And Matt's going to say, yeah, I know 3 people in LA. And I'm going to say, hey, would you mind just doing a warm intro or intro text? And so that's the step 1 that I would do. Step 2 that I would do is I would look at what groups or organizations exist in my ecosystem of whatever I live in. And I would go to that group and see how I can get involved.
What if you're scared? What if it's like that's really taxing to show up to an event or whatever that you don't know anyone?
Then don't expect to meet anybody.
Boom. There we go. Mic drop.
I think that's true.
It's true. I mean, it's you get out what you put in, and you can never extract value from anything if you haven't added value. And I think that people should have the attitude of I'm going to add value first.
You can't win if you don't play.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You can't win the game if you're not in the game. So just get on the field, and who knows if it's going to be a small victory, a big victory, or whatever. It doesn't matter. But all these little moments lead up to whatever greatness is for you in your life, whatever that means. But you got to get in the game.
I love that. All right, Matt, you're dropped in a new city. You don't know anybody.
I mean, I think Toph's on the right track there. Same thing. Find the groups that already exist. Like one of the things I've seen in a lot of growing communities is, people showing up on the scene and just being like, I'm going to start this group to do XYZ kind of thing. And don't acknowledge that like there's lots of groups already that are in that community that they could go and be a part of. So I think starting there, like what groups are already meeting, what events can I go to? And then when you're in that environment, remembering that you always have something to offer. You have your network, you have your experience, you have your knowledge, presumably, if you've done literally anything in your career. And so going into that with the give first mentality, we talk about it a lot at Powder Keg. I think it was Brad Feld in the Techstars community originally kind of coined that phrase, give first. But coming into a community with, I have something to offer, and just always remembering everybody has something that they can offer. And if you go into that event with like, I'm going to go and just see who I can connect with. And I'm going to be listening, not like, what can I get out of this and who's going to be my friend, but more, how can I help someone?
100%.
And make that the game.
Yeah, if you like never think about what am I going to get out of this, because if you do that, you'll get nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It's true in business relationships. It's true in coworker relationships. It's true in your number one primary relationship. If you're always kind of like scorekeeping, it is like an ideal way to make sure that you just like slowly go bankrupt emotionally, intellectually, maybe financially. If you're just kind of like always trying to hold on to like what you've got and you feel like you've got to protect it because you don't have anything, and that definitely takes some mental work if that's your natural default state. But having that abundance mindset.
Presumably, there's both extroverts and introverts listening to this podcast, right? And so one thing I always like to just remind all of us is like, still today, I go into situations where I'm not quite comfortable, right? It might be a new situation or a new group or whatever. And but I think a lot, and this, again, it's back to this human, just the way humans are. It's just natural to feel uncomfortable, to feel anxious, to be a little bit of afraid, or you walk into a crowd and maybe you're kind of first in that environment and oh my gosh, everybody seems to know each other. When you look at the macro level, they all seem to know each other. And when you just say, okay, here I go. Those two people, I'm just going to butt in the middle, right? Not butt in, but like, hey, how you doing? And a lot of times you'll find they don't actually know each other. They just start talking 15 minutes ago or 10 minutes ago, right?
Yep.
And a lot of them are uncomfortable as well. And so like sometimes it's hard and it feels awkward. But just take the leap of faith. And if you see somebody walk in a room and you because you can tell when somebody's in a room and they're alone and they're feeling uncomfortable, just invite them into your conversation.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Is I always try to like not go find like the biggest group that seems like they're having the most fun, but like go find the person that's like got their arms crossed and is like standing in the corner. Yeah. Or, is like they're on the outside of a circle, but they're not really like in the circle. Yeah. Go up and just stand next to, like, it can be helpful to just like stand next to someone and be like, hey, what's up? As opposed to like coming directly at somebody. Yeah. And you gotta kind of like feel the room a little bit on that one. But hey, I'm Matt. I work at Powder Keg. What's your name? This is a good way to start a conversation.
That's right.
What is this is a great segue. What is your number one tip for in-person networking events?
What Matt just said. I mean, like,
so find the people that don't look like they have friends yet, or they haven't, like, that also seem to be a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, so if you, let's say Matt and I we know each other. We're at an event and we're catching up, whatever. We see you walk in, we don't know you, and you're kind of standing on the periphery, not sure. You're trying to pick your entry point, right? If we notice that. And I, by the way, I don't always do this, and sometimes I'm deep in a conversation with you.
It's hard too.
I'm like, okay, there's somebody over there, and I'm going to say hey in a moment, but I want to finish this thought, and then they've kind of mingled somewhere else.
Yep.
But just say, hey, come over here and join us, right? Or like you don't have to have some grand elevator pitch, right? Hey, I'm Matt with Powder Keg. Like,
ooh, okay.
What's your name? Where are you from?
So I think one of my biggest tips for in-person networking events, or just meeting new people in general, is I try to find common ground as soon as possible. Like, where are you from?
Yeah.
Buck Creek. Oh, where's that at?
Where's that?
By Lafayette. Oh, I know a thing or two about. And just do you know so-and-so? And like trying to find any piece of common ground, just so it's like, oh, wow, they know this. Like, so I know, this is one of my hidden secrets that I'm going to divulge. I know a ton of high school mascots. So I just like know, especially around Indiana, like I know especially the weird ones, like maybe not necessarily all the big ones, but it's like, oh, I'm from Akron, Indiana. I'm like, oh, Tippy Valley, go Vikings. And they're just like, oh my gosh, how did you know that? And I'm like, oh, I just know a thing or two about high school sports.
That's wild.
And they always feel like, oh my gosh, like works at bars, works at networking events. It is.
Do you remember Harrison High School?
Harrison in Lafayette?
Uh-huh.
Oh, yes. Actually, one of my buddies went there. Harrison is it. I'm going to say Mustangs.
Starts with an R.
R. Raiders.
Bam. You hit on the tip of your tongue.
I think is Lafayette Jeff? Are they?
What's Lafayette Jeff?
Broncos.
Mustangs, Broncos. So in the right ball, but it's like, I can then backtrack a little bit and make those connections, but it's usually high school mascots, and especially in the reaches of Indiana, people are I'm like, wow, Wow. How did you know that?
I totally agree with that. Typically, in under 3 questions, you can find some kind of common ground, right? Through where you grew up or where you went to school. What do you do? Are you in sales or marketing or what like something?
And I think too, in this day and age, you're going to an event, you can usually either make an educated guess, or there's probably a guest list that you can look at ahead of time.
Yeah.
And just like go look at their LinkedIn profile or go find them on Instagram, like do a little research. Like it doesn't have to be crazy. You don't have to do like 3 hours of research before you go to an event that you're going to be at for 45 minutes. But even just taking 5-10 minutes to like look down the page. Oh, I know this person, this person, this person. Cool. I'll probably see them there. But like, who are some other people who are here that like I might want to talk to, or like I might be able to help based on like where they're at in their career. And so just like looking at that, so when you're in a room, you see faces and you can kind of be like, oh, I know that person. And granted, I have an advantage. I'm 6'4", so I can literally see the entire room from like wherever I am.
Humble brag.
I mean, I just want to acknowledge I have some privilege there that I am able to see, the entire room.
Toph, I'm wearing stilts to rally.
Exactly.
Dude, I think you should do that. I think that'd be great. Certainly a good conversation starter.
That would
Who's the guy on stilts?
Brilliant. Yeah. Love it.
Well, that's a good point of like looking at the guest list of like who you want to talk to, who you know. I would love to know, right? So put yourself in a contrarian view, right? People show up to networking events. You don't want to make it all transactional. You don't want to be sales. But what is one of your contrarian thoughts when it comes to building community, building a network that the average person might think that's a little interesting? Like you really grow your community that way?
Well, I will say over the years, I've been in a number of situations where it's certainly felt like, I'll say at a minimum, that the person had no interest in engaging or talking. And I would just say that sometimes that's going to happen. And it's not because of you, not because of...
You might have had a bad day.
Might have had a bad day, who knows, right? And so I'm not sure if that's what you're looking for from the contrarian thing, but sometimes I just think bringing up, like, there's going to be moments where you're like, do I smell bad, or do I talk like an idiot? But sometimes people just aren't going to want to engage, and they're going to be cold.
I think my contrarian view, I'm thinking about my like 20-something-year-old self, and don't get me wrong, I do feel like I benefited from like building a very broad and diverse network of people and friends. But if you're just starting out or you don't feel like you have this yet, I would, if given the choice of a broad, diverse, super connected, network, I know somebody, like we've had a conversation before, versus I know a few people and I like know them. I have a real relationship with these people, and like I can share my full self with that person. I would, hands down, now being, whatever I am, 15, 20 years into my career, hands down would rather be narrow and deep with a handful of just like great people. Like we're on similar paths. Maybe a few are ahead of me, maybe in terms of like career accolades, maybe a few, haven't, or a few years behind me in terms of like just where they're at in their career. But still having a diverse group, I think diversity in your network is super important, but I would much rather have a narrow but deep network than have a broad and shallow and like, I'm not actually like being, it's totally superficial. And it's just like, everyone has seen that person at the event that's just like collecting business cards as if like that's the thing. Yeah. And I still have like boxes of business cards, from the early days of Verge and like people that I met. That was totally my MO when I was in my 20s. I was like, I'm going to meet a lot of people and I'm going to be Mr. Connector. And, that I made a whole career out of that in some ways, if you think about what our software platform does now. But if given the choice, and what I think is most valuable in a career and in terms of like quality of life, having a narrow but deep group of friends. Like if I said, Toph, would you rather have the relationships with the EO entrepreneurs that you have a 20-year relationship with and you've been through it together with multiple different ventures, or, scrap all that, you didn't have any of those relationships and you could just have like a bunch of contacts on LinkedIn? Right. Yeah. I mean, hands down, even if it was like, you could have 1 million followers on Instagram, or you could have your group of 20 people.
I don't know. 1 million followers on Instagram, you can do a lot with that. Guys, that might be my contrarian view.
Yeah.
I got to butt in here, Nate. So I hear you. I feel you. But we touched on this yesterday in the podcast. I'm reading this book right now called Halftime. And it's really interesting. And they talk about this concept of struggle, success, significance, surrender.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be applied in the book talks about it in terms of like life, right? And so kind of really oriented around age. And when you get to be, 50 years old plus or minus, you're in this.
Which you'll do in 11 years.
In 11 years.
Yeah.
At least that's how I feel. I feel like I'm 35.
Yeah.
But so they kind of, in general, they think humans kind of go through this. You're at that significance point sometime around 50. And they talk about this concept of retirement. And like if you retire, you have no purpose. There's no core. Like what's your core? What is your unique, my unique, your unique core in life is to do what, right? And where you really get value. And if you can't do that and be real with people, then you die.
This is great. One of my really good friends.
Are you really living?
Yeah.
You're not really living, right?
So one of my really good friends, he writes a newsletter, right? Jimmy Nuveen from Freedom Files. I'll give him a little shout out. But his latest edition talked about what changed his life at 24. He wrote his obituary, or what he hopes his obituary to be.
Yes.
And then worked backwards from that.
Yeah.
And like, how can you start achieving what you want to do? Like he has space travel in his obituary. He wants to go to space one day.
Awesome.
And he's like, how can I work myself towards that? And I think that's super powerful. And then
let's tell him not to go to the Titanic. Let's do space.
No
yes,
kidding.
yes, go space. Yeah, right. Oh, there we go. I will say
Too soon? Oops.
Oh, yeah, we're all right. I will say, thinking about narrow and deep, having a small network, a small circle of people. I think the way I think about building community is you take a lot of at-bats, right? Collect those business cards. I'll get coffee. I'll talk to these people. And the ones that are supposed to be in my life and the ones that are supposed to be deep connections will work their way to the top. And it has happened time and time again but if you keep the same narrow circle, right, it's tough to get.
It's kind of like the spaghetti at the wall analogy.
Yeah.
It's like, you go meet a lot of people, and then the ones that it's like working out, go deep.
Yep. And then they just like float their way to the top, and it's like, oh, right. You have to sit through some tough coffee chats, some like brutal ones where you're like, oh, looking at the time, like, dude, we just not vibing. Like, that just happens sometimes. But the right ones will work their way to the top, in my opinion.
So I think this is important for anyone, whatever their discipline or passion is, or whatever it may be. So if you're in sales or engineering, marketing, whatever, leadership roles, et cetera. There are a lot of groups I've noticed spinning up, and that are around like a product leader group or a marketing leader group or whatever. All these different types of groups are spinning up, and that's a way to really get deep and develop a kind of a close cohort. Like you can go deep. It's more natural. It doesn't happen always this way, but especially in professional relationships, like it's easier to go deeper with people who are experiencing the same thing you are. If that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And that's like the icebreaker of how you can kind of get deep into those, struggles. And if you don't find one in your community, start it, because chances are you can find the next person, right? And if you can get 2, then now you can get 3, and you can get 6, and now you get 9.
Yeah.
And it's hard those groups are hard to manage if they get 2. If you want to go deeper, they need to probably stay 15 or less. Or maybe they get bigger and they splinter off into 2 groups, and maybe you kind of meet for more social reasons, which is back to EO, right?
Yep.
I mean, you've got a huge network. Now you meet with a forum, then you go really deep, with a dozen people, but then you also connect, in a larger fashion.
Yeah.
And still have, that larger network that you're talking about.
I love it. This has been great. I kind of want to switch to some rapid fire questions so we can kind of just like, churn and burn through some quick actionable tips, right? So give advice to emerging leaders that want to get on your calendar. You guys are very well-connected CEOs. Time is very precious. If there's an emerging leader that wants to get on your calendar, what's some advice?
Yeah. So I literally just noticed this morning, like, number one, a LinkedIn message that is not even on point will never work. And I honestly, in full disclosure, I don't even pay attention to the LinkedIn messages really. But the specificity. So what is the thing that you want to talk about, and why do you want to talk about that? And I would love to have the coffees and the lunches and the drinks with everybody. And I just will say proactively right now, I apologize from the depths of my heart. I just can't do it, right? There's just so many directions that I'm getting pulled. But to be really super specific up front, like investment banking, we always call it like grab them by the collar. Like, what's the grab them by the collar thing that you're going to put up there first, and why you want to talk about it. And like, it's okay just to like 50. And I've started even telling some people, there's my cell phone, call me. If I miss your call, I'll call you back. And but the calendar's just, it's all booked.
Okay. Matt?
I mean, I'm in a similar position as Toph. As I mentioned, I spent my 20s trying to build a giant network, and I was successful at it. So I would love to meet with everybody. The thing I've found for me is just like, these are the events I'm going to be at. And if you want to meet up, like, go to that event, and like maybe
That's a great idea.
Maybe we grab coffee there. Maybe
Is the event rally?
Come say hi. Yeah, maybe it's rally.
I said that with a couple of powder keg events. I'm like, by the way, in 3 weeks I'm gonna be at this powder keg event.
Yeah,
and come there and check me down, and we'll talk for 5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's what's worked for me, and I just want to double down on what you said on just like be specific, and usually whatever it is, like an emerging leader is looking to get out of a meeting can be handled over email. Hey, I'm looking for an introduction to blah, 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 blah. Or, hey, I would like to figure out where to, raise money from, and like, I've probably written a blog post on it, or someone on our team has put a resource together on it, or, we have software developed to help make the introduction to the person that you want to talk to. And so being specific. And if that hasn't been developed yet, then I probably take the meeting and say like, hey, this seems like something we can't really talk about on email. Let's just grab 15 minutes and hash it out.
I love that. 15 minutes means you got to come prepared.
The other thing I'd also say is why are you reaching out? So let's just take an example. Let's just say that a company wants to get into the Elevate Portco network as an example. I'm not the best person to talk to.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
There's somebody else on the team that's the best person to talk to. I'm literally not the right person to talk to.
Yeah.
I think that's a super interesting part, right? So especially for young professionals out there, and I've learned this the hard way from trial and error. It's like, I've reached out to countless CEOs, to like, hey, can I pick your brain? Can I do this? And I've done it all wrong, got crickets. And honestly, like, for like a young first-time founder, it's like, you might not be the right person to talk to. Like, just because your title says CEO and it's like a cool person to get coffee with, someone who's like one step ahead of you in your entrepreneurial journey, in your professional journey, can be so much more impactful, giving you actionable items. Like, let's say you want to be a director of marketing, right? Like, that's your next step in your professional career. Don't reach out to a CMO or a VP of marketing. Talk to a director of marketing. Their calendar is probably a little more freed up. They're going to give you actionable items to go from 0 to 1 versus like for a person who's at 100. And I think that is like a game changer of like really getting actionable items from, doesn't have to be the CEO. Like, even though it's a cool coffee to get to, it can actually be more valuable for you going like 1 or 2 steps ahead. So that's.
And I'm going to add one more tip in there, which is develop a relationship online first. Jump into the LinkedIn comments on a post that I post, contribute something to the community that way. If you see something I post about and you have an opinion on it, it doesn't have to agree. You don't have to agree with what I say. Maybe end up in a conversation, maybe even more likely to end up in a conversation if you disagree with what I say and we engage in like a cordial discourse.
You're a moron.
In the comments.
Don't say that.
Yeah, probably won't say that. But actually connecting and developing a relationship on social media right now is very possible, and doing that on a professional network like LinkedIn or on Powder Keg, if you're in Powder Keg, is a good way to.
There was a lady, speaking of that, Matt, like, and that's adding value first, right?
Yep.
But so like literally, I every once in a while I'll go in, I'll scan LinkedIn messages and like literally scan them. There was a lady in California that reached out through LinkedIn, and I can't remember what she said that caught but it was something like, I saw your event called Rally. It looks amazing, and I think I can blah something. And I'm like, I clicked on it, and I clicked on her. I'm like, she's totally legit. And so I just like, I'm going to risk it. Responded to her, and I'm like, this is my cell phone number if you want to talk. 10 minutes, she called me.
Woo!
Yeah.
Yes.
And it was, I just got chills. It was insane.
Yeah.
And she's coming, and she wants to rally other people.
Let's go.
And she's total baller, and it's just awesome.
Huge. That's great.
Well, gentlemen, as we wrap up, final question. Just one for the lightning round today. It's a quick one. What are you most excited about in the Hoosier State right now? Matt, you go first.
I mean, it's probably the same thing Toph's going to say. Yeah, so Toph, why don't you go
let's
first?
rip on it. Let's riff on it, boys.
So I'm the most excited thing. The thing I'm most excited about right now is Rally. That Rally, the world's largest cross-sector innovation conference, is going to be launched right here in Indiana, in Indianapolis, and there's going to be people coming from across the globe in the inaugural year. It's going to be insane. There's 443 pitch applications that came in for a $5 million pitch competition. In the investor one-on-ones that are happening, there's people in there from 18 countries and 24 states. That's just in the investor one-on-ones. There's over 220 speakers. You got Peyton Manning and Magic Johnson, Crystal Washington, Victoria Arlen, Victor Wang, Moira Gunn, Mung Chang, Scott Dorsey. A couple of those names I just mentioned haven't been announced yet. So
Heard it here first.
So anyways,
Breaking news.
So it's going to be insane. And the world has changed forever. Everything is happening faster than it's ever happened before. We can no longer do things in a vacuum with just our domain experience and the people we know in our little networks, right? We have to get outside of our networks. We have to get to know people with domain expertise and other things. If I'm building a med device, is that healthcare, right? Is it hard tech? Is it software? It's all of those things, right? With anything we build today. And so getting all of those people, disparate stakeholders from cross-sector in one place at one time, that is how we enable creative collisions. That's how magic happens. That's how we really advance innovative ecosystems in people's lives.
I love it.
And speaking of magic, I'm excited to meet Magic Johnson at Rally and hear his keynote and the awards that we're doing, the National Powder Keg Awards that we're doing just before the
I'm
final
so stoked
keynote.
for those. Talk about those.
It's going to be great. So we literally are looking at thousands of companies. We have data, both first party and third party data on thousands of companies across what we call the Unvalley, the tech hubs beyond Silicon Valley, which are the fastest growing tech communities where there's just outsized opportunities. So whether you're looking to grow your career or looking to invest or looking to partner up with companies, those are the places where there's just a ton of opportunity. And so we'll actually be launching the national awards in all the major categories, fintech, hard tech, you name it. We're going to be announcing those awards there. And so it's literally the best dozen companies out of thousands that we're going to be announcing on stage there at Rally. So
It's going to be sick.
3-day conference. And I would be remiss if I didn't say I am so pumped about Get In and what we've built here. It has been awesome to hear from listeners what you like about the show, what you'd like to hear more of. I've got my Sweetwater water bottle here because there are entrepreneurs in Indiana like Sweetwater, the founder and CEO of Sweetwater, that we're trying to get on the show.
The innovation at Sweetwater is off the chain. It is insane.
Just tease it.
It's
Tease
so
it. We're not
cool.
gonna. We're not.
Oh, that's
gonna
right.
We're not gonna
Yeah, we're
divulge
just gonna
anything
tease
that's
it.
going on.
But I hope we can do some amazing things for our listeners of Get In and do some really cool Get In activations at Rally. I think there's a lot of just kind of stuff on the ground that we're going to be able to do, and hope we can talk to our listeners at Rally as well.
Well,
One more, I
funny
just
you
have to mention one more thing real quick.
All right, let's hear it.
The other exciting thing is that we didn't think this would happen until 3 years into it. But just like down in South by Southwest, you have these houses that pop up, right? So already in year one, Midwest House is coming.
Yeah.
They are all over it. They were putting together an
They've
awesome
been doing that at
house.
South by for a couple years
Yeah,
now.
yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
And so they're taking over the Cohatch
Yes.
space and launching a bunch of folks. Are literally lining up buses from other cities to come in. It's going to be insane.
Yeah, it's going to be
And then
sweet.
there's 3 other conferences that are holding their annual summits or annual meetings or their actual conference within Rally, still keeping their brand names, right? But you've got Indie Women in Tech, you've got the Indiana Technology Innovation Association, ITIA, and then Generator, their ag conference that's over in Illinois. They brought that over to Indianapolis to Rally. And that's what we want to happen in the future. If you have a conference or an annual summit that you're doing and you typically attract 100, 300, 500 people or even 1,000 people, whatever it is, Rally is built for every big tent, open concept, open source code.
Yeah.
I like to think about it, right?
Yes.
That's
When
why we
open-
did our awards with it.
Yeah.
It's
open. So
why,
come
why
on
do
in.
that separately if
Yeah.
we're going to have a group of thousands of people?
That's right. Just adds more value for everybody.
Yep.
Well, if anyone wants to make an Indiana house, I'm down to make that happen. I got a house spot in Broad Ripple. We'll spin up the Indiana house for Rally.
I like it.
Let's go.
There we go.
And the final thing, Matt talked about listener activation. Toph had an amazing idea today that we're gonna open up. So as you can see, if you are watching at home, Toph and I are rocking some. I got my powder keg tee on. He's got his demand jump tee on. If you want your business, your company to have a little bit of presence on the Get In show, If you send us 3 large t-shirts, we will wear your startup tee on an episode, and we'll give a little 30-second pitch about you, what your company does, who you are. So a way to get the community plugged in. You don't have to be from Indiana. You could be from anywhere. Anyone out there listening, if you send 3 larges to 16 Tech in Indianapolis, we will wear them on the show.
Attention powder keg.
Attention
right?
powder keg. Yes. Or Nate. Yep. Send them to Nate. If you need extra details, hit me up on LinkedIn. But 3 larges, we'll wear them on the show. We'll give you a little 30-second to a minute shout out. And we want to know who's listening, and we want to learn about these innovative tech companies. And
I love it.
That's a wrap. Gentlemen, this was a spectacular episode. I'm pumped for Rally. Excited to talk about failure, momentum, and everything building a networking community. I think that this was really impactful for listeners, and I'm excited to get in at Rally.
Awesome.
Let's do it. This has been Get In, a Powder Keg production in partnership with Elevate Ventures. And we want to hear from you. If you have suggestions for a guest or segment, reach out to Matt or Nate on LinkedIn or on email. To discover top-tier tech companies outside of Silicon Valley in hubs like Indiana, check out our newsletter at powderkeg.com/newsletter. And to apply for membership to the Powder Keg executive community, check out powderkeg.com/premium. We'll catch you next time and next week as we continue to help the world get in. Since you just listened to this podcast, you might be thinking about starting one for your company. Lucky for you, our partners over at Casted have you covered. Casted is the first and only podcast and video marketing platform made specifically for B2B brands. I love this about them. The platform makes it possible to publish, syndicate, amplify, and measure the value of your podcast and video content. In fact, we use it for our podcast here at Powder Keg. And if you're a startup, you should listen up, because Casted for Startups is definitely for you. They are offering exclusive deep discounts of up to 82% off retail price for qualifying startups. Connect with Casted at casted.us/powderkeg.